I kept my family's immense fortune a secret, desperate to find love for me. Not my money, but the moment my $24 million engagement ring exposed everything, I realized the true cost of that lie might be my entire future. I've always believed that money complicates things. It doesn't just buy you nice cars and fancy houses. It buys you suspicion, envy, and a whole lot of fake friends. My parents built their tech empire from the ground up, and while I never wanted for anything, I also never knew if people liked me or the idea of me. So when I moved to a new city for a fresh start, I made a conscious decision. I was going to be just Emily. Not Emily Vanderbilt Hart, heiress to a fortune that could buy a small country, but Emily Hart, a freelance graphic designer living in a cozy one-bedroom apartment and driving a sensible 10-year-old Honda Civic. And for 2 blissful years, it worked. Then I met Mark. He was kind, funny, an architect with a passion for sustainable design, and he didn't have a materialistic bone in his body. He fell in love with the me who budgeted for groceries, who got excited about finding a vintage couch on the side of the road, and who thought a perfect date was a hike, followed by cheap tacos. He loved me, and it was the most liberating feeling in the world. I was so terrified of ruining it that I just never corrected the narrative. He knew I had a small trust fund from my grandparents that covered my basics so I could be picky with my design projects, but in his mind that meant a few thousand a year, not enough to turn heads. The problem wasn't Mark. It was his family. His mother, Brenda, in particular, seemed to view me as a personal failing on her son's part. She was a woman who valued appearances above all else. Their family wasn't wealthy, but they stretched every dollar to maintain the illusion of upper-middle-class comfort. To her, my beat-up Honda was an embarrassment. My apartment was quaint in the most insulting way possible, and my job was a cute little hobby. Every family dinner was a thinly veiled interrogation. "Emily, dear," Brenda would start, stirring her iced tea with a clink, "have you thought about getting a more stable position? Perhaps something with a 401k? Mark worries, you know." I'd just smile and say, "I'm really happy with the flexibility I have, Brenda." His sister, Jessica, was a carbon copy of her mother. "I just don't get it, Mark." She'd sigh dramatically, loud enough for me to hear from the other room. "You could have any girl you want, a doctor, a lawyer, someone with, ambition." Mark always defended me. He'd wrap an arm around me, pull me close, and say, "I have the exact girl I want." But I could see the toll it took on him. He loved his family, and their constant disapproval of me was a weight on his shoulders. I felt a constant simmering guilt, knowing that I held the one secret that would instantly silence them. But if I told them, would Mark look at me differently? Would that pure, uncomplicated love we had become tainted by the sheer, overwhelming number in my bank account? I couldn't risk it. The breaking point and the beginning of the end came on his parents' 35th wedding anniversary. Mark decided this was the night he was going to propose. We were at La Belle Vie, the fanciest restaurant in town, a place Brenda had been dropping hints about for months. I knew the bill would make them wince for the rest of the year, but tonight was all about appearances. Brenda was in her element, critiquing the wine and bragging about Mark's latest project to anyone who would listen. Throughout the appetizers, I was subjected to the usual barrage of passive-aggressive comments. My dress was simple but sweet. My stories about a recent camping trip were met with blank stares. I just gripped Mark's hand under the table, reminding myself that this was all temporary. Soon it would just be us. Then, after the main course, Mark stood up. He cleared his throat, his hands trembling slightly. The whole restaurant didn't go quiet, but our little corner of it did. He looked at me, and the entire world melted away. The noisy restaurant, his judgmental mother, his snide sister, none of it mattered. There was only him. "Emily," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "From the moment I met you, you turned my world upside down in the best possible way. You're the kindest, most genuine person I've ever known. You make me better." He slowly got down on one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. My heart hammered against my ribs, tears already welling in my eyes. He opened the box, and inside, sitting on a bed of black velvet, was the ring. It wasn't just a ring. It was a statement. A flawless 5-carat cushion-cut diamond flanked by 2 smaller sapphires, set in a delicate platinum band. It was a family heirloom, one that had been passed down my mother's side for generations. The Starlight Diamond. I'd given it to Mark months ago, telling him it was from my grandmother, and that if he ever decided to propose, this was the one I wanted. "Emily Hart, will you marry me?" he asked. Through my happy tears, I choked out, "Yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, and it caught the light, sending a shower of rainbows across the table. For a moment, there was just joy. His father clapped him on the back. Even Jessica managed a tight-lipped smile. But Brenda was silent. She was staring, transfixed, at my hand. Her perfectly manicured mask of polite disapproval had shattered, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. Her voice was a sharp whisper that cut through the happy chatter. "Mark, where did you get that ring?" Mark, beaming, wrapped his arm around me. "It's a family heirloom," he said proudly, "from Emily's side." Brenda's eyes darted from the ring to my face and back again. A strange, calculating light flickered in her gaze. She leaned forward, her voice trembling with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "That's impossible," she breathed. That's the Starlight Diamond. I saw it in an auction catalog last year. It sold for $24 million. The silence that fell over the table was heavier than a tombstone. $24 million. The number hung in the air, obscene and glittering, just like the diamond on my finger. Mark's head snapped towards me, his expression a chaotic mix of confusion and disbelief. "Em? What is she talking about? An auction?" His voice was steady, but I could see a flicker of panic in his eyes. He was looking for me, his Emily, to laugh it off, to explain the ridiculous misunderstanding. But I couldn't. The lie had run its course. I took a shaky breath, my throat feeling like it was closing in on itself. She's not wrong about the ring," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "My family, they're in the tech industry. They're very successful." "Very successful?" Jessica scoffed, her eyes wide as she stared at my ring. "Mark, she drives a car that's held together with duct tape and hope. What is this? Some kind of prank?" "It's not a prank," I said, looking directly at Mark, trying to plead with my eyes for him to understand. "I didn't want it to matter. I wanted you to know me for me, not for that." I gestured vaguely, encompassing the unspoken billions that suddenly felt like a wall between us. Mark just stared at me, his face unreadable. The joy from his proposal had vanished, replaced by a deep, unsettling stillness. But while my fiance was processing this cataclysmic shift in his reality, his mother was undergoing a transformation of her own. The shock on Brenda's face melted away, replaced by a smile so wide and predatory it made my skin crawl. "Oh, Emily, my dear girl." she gushed, reaching across the table to grab my hand, the one with the ring, and holding it up to the light. You clever, clever thing, keeping a secret like that. Oh, we have so much to talk about. The wedding. It will have to be at the country club, of course. We can finally get a proper membership. And your parents. We must meet them immediately. The rest of the dinner was a surreal nightmare. Brenda, who an hour ago was subtly insulting my career, was now asking for my father's private contact information to discuss synergies with her husband's struggling hardware store. Jessica had suddenly decided we were best friends, asking me if my family had a vacation home in the Hamptons and if I could get her an inn with a fashion brand my mother sat on the board of. Mark's father just looked bewildered, occasionally muttering, "Well, I'll be." Through it all, Mark was silent. He ate his dessert with mechanical precision, his jaw tight. He answered his family's excited chatter with one-word responses. He didn't look at me, not once. The chasm that had opened between us at that table felt 1,000,000 miles wide. The drive back to my apartment was worse. The silence in his car was deafening, thick with everything we weren't saying. When he pulled up to my building, he didn't turn off the engine. "Mark?" I said softly. "I need some time to think, Emily," he said, his voice flat, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "You lied to me. For 2 years, you let me believe. You let my family treat you." He trailed off, shaking his head. "I just need to think." He didn't kiss me goodnight. I got out of the car and watched him drive away, the Starlight Diamond feeling like a $24 million boulder on my finger. The next 2 days were torture. My ecstatic yes to his proposal echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. Our only communication was a few stilted texts. "Hope you're okay." "You too." It felt like we were strangers. I knew I had broken his trust, but I hoped, prayed, that he would understand why. I hoped our love was stronger than my lie. On the third night, he showed up at my door. My heart leapt with hope. But one look at his face and it plummeted. He looked exhausted, his shoulders slumped. He walked past me into the living room, the one with the vintage couch I'd been so proud of, and it suddenly looked cheap and pathetic. "My mom called a family meeting," he said, not looking at me. "Without you, obviously." "Mark, I'm so sorry. They're very excited." He cut me off, a bitter edge to his voice. "They've already started a list." "A list of what? Wedding guests?" He finally turned to look at me, and his eyes were full of a pain I had never seen before. "A list of things you can do for the family, now that you're one of us. Pay off their mortgage. A new car for Jessica, because hers is unreliable. A significant investment to expand my dad's store." He let out a hollow, humorless laugh. "Brenda called it your dowry. A way to prove my love for you wasn't a mistake, and a way for you to show you're truly committed to this family." My blood ran cold. This was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about a lavish wedding anymore. It was extortion, wrapped in a pretty bow. "Mark, that's insane," I whispered. "You don't believe that, do you?" He ran a hand through his hair, his gaze dropping to the floor. He looked trapped, torn between the woman he loved and the family who raised him. When he looked back up at me, his expression was desperate. "They think I'm the luckiest man in the world. They think all our problems are solved. My mom said, if you really love me and you really want to be part of our family, then helping us out is the smallest, most natural thing in the world." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a raw, pleading whisper. "She said this is the only way they'll ever give us their blessing. So, tell me, Emily, What do I tell them? I looked at the man I loved, the man who had trembled with joy just a few nights ago, and felt a profound, chilling sadness. He wasn't asking me a question. He was delivering a message. He was the handsome, smiling face of his family's greed, the beautiful trap they had set for me. I slowly, deliberately slid the starlight diamond off my finger. The weight of it vanished, but a heavier weight settled in my chest. I placed the ring on the vintage wooden coffee table between us. It sat there, glittering under the dim light, looking utterly obscene in my humble apartment. "There's your answer," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You can tell them that." Mark stared at the ring, then at me, his face stricken with panic. "Emily, no, that's not what I meant. I don't know what to do." "Yes, you do, Mark," I said, standing up. "I needed to put distance between us. You fell in love with a freelance graphic designer who budgets her groceries, a woman who was happy with tacos and hikes. Was any of that real to you, or was it just a placeholder until something better came along?" "Of course it was real. It's the realest thing in my life," he insisted, his voice cracking. "Then what is this?" I asked, gesturing to the ring on the table. "This is not about a blessing, Mark. This is a business transaction. They aren't welcoming a daughter-in-law, they're acquiring an asset, and they've sent you, their chief negotiator, to see what terms I'll agree to. So I ask you, what do you want? Forget them. What do you, the man who got down on one knee in that restaurant, want?" He was silent, his eyes fixed on the diamond. He saw it now. He saw it for the cursed, beautiful thing it had become. It wasn't a symbol of our love anymore. It was the price tag. I watched as a war raged behind his eyes. The Mark who loved his mother, who craved her approval, was battling the Mark who loved me. For 2 agonizing years, I had hidden my wealth to find out if I could be loved for who I am. I never imagined the final test wouldn't be for me, but for him. Finally, he looked up, and the desperation in his eyes had been replaced by a hard, clear resolve. "I want you," he said, his voice raw. "Just you. The Emily with the beat-up Honda and the passion for finding junk on the side of the road. That's the woman I asked to marry me." He pulled out his phone. My heart hammered in my chest. He scrolled through his contacts and pressed the call button, putting it on speaker without me asking. "Mark, darling," Brenda's cheerful voice filled the room. "Do you have good news for me? Have you and Emily worked out the arrangements?" "I have news," Mark said, his voice cold as steel. "The wedding is off." The silence on the other end of the line was immediate and absolute. Then Brenda's voice came back, dripping with venom. "What did she do? That selfish little—" "She did nothing," Mark cut her off. "She held up a mirror, and I finally saw what this family looks like. There will be no dowry. There will be no mortgage payments or new cars. And until you can see Emily as my future wife instead of your winning lottery ticket, there will be no relationship with me either. We're done." He hung up before she could respond, the abrupt silence in the room more powerful than any shouting match. He looked at me, his face pale but his eyes steady. He looked like a man who had just cut off a limb to save his own life. He walked over to the coffee table, picked up the starlight diamond, and held it out to me. "I love you, Emily Hart. I don't care if you have $24 or $24 million. I should have told them to go to hell the second they suggested it. I am so sorry I let their poison even enter this apartment." Tears streamed down my face, but they were tears of relief. He had passed the test. We had passed. I took the ring from his hand. "This isn't us," I said, looking at the impossibly brilliant stone. "This is a legacy, a history, a burden. Our story should be something we build ourselves." He nodded, a slow, sad smile on his face. He sank to one knee again, right there on my worn-out rug, next to the vintage couch. He had nothing in his hands this time but his own heart. "Emily Hart," he said, his voice full of the emotion I'd heard in the restaurant. "I have no ring to offer you and apparently no family to welcome you into. But I have a life I want to spend making you happy. Will you marry me and build something new with me?" I laughed through my tears and pulled him to his feet. "Yes," I whispered, kissing him. 1,000 times yes. We did get married 6 months later. It was a small ceremony at the courthouse with a handful of our real friends. I wore a simple white dress I bought online. I sold the Starlight Diamond and put the entire $24 million into a charitable foundation for aspiring young architects and artists people like us. My ring is a simple platinum band that Mark designed himself. It's perfect. We bought a small house with a big yard and we're fixing it up ourselves. Mark's father has called a few times, apologetic and quiet. We're taking that one day at a time. We've never heard from Brenda or Jessica again. And every time I look at my husband, covered in sawdust and smiling, I know I was right. Money complicates things. But real love? That's the simplest and most valuable thing in the world.